Hello. We have a full moon coming up on the west coast of the United States. The full moon will be in the early morning hours of Sunday, August 26th, and it will be at around 3 degrees Pisces, the water sign of Pisces, with the sun at around 3 degrees of the earth sign of Virgo. Generally speaking, the aspects for this particular full moon, they're pretty good. They're fine. There's a lot of actually very good aspects happening. And there's a grand trine formed between the sun in Virgo and Uranus in Taurus, which is what we're going to talk about, and Saturn in Capricorn. So, that should generally be good for any of a number of signs. For some reason, perhaps because there's some upcoming astrological aspects and changes in the movements of the planets, people seem to be dealing a lot with this fairly new astrological development, Uranus in the sign of Taurus. Uranus moved into Taurus earlier in the spring of this year, and it is now going retrograde. It will re-enter the end of the sign of Aries, and then it will, then early next year, it will return into Taurus, and where it will be for about 7 years. It's still in Taurus right now. I think it hits Aries in probably October. But this is a really big aspect, and it's a very weird one too. And in this particular discussion of the astrological weather report or whatever for this full moon and for this period of time, I'm going to bring in a lot of different elements, all the different elements of what I do. I'm going to bring in some of the tarot, because the readings that have been coming up for people lately have been really, really weird. And they express the particular weirdness of the astrological aspects that we're dealing with. And they also mirror something else that I've been talking about and working on in the translations of the Yoga Sutras, which is primarily interesting in terms of sort of telling you what to make out of all this stuff. So, Uranus and Taurus are very, very odd energies. Uranus is like the new, the bold, the innovative, the electric, the exciting. It's also the disruptor and the upsetter and the destroyer, really. It's not the destroyer like death, where it's destroying and reborn. It's the smash the tower. And it is well represented by the tarot card of the tower. There it is. And the tower's been coming up in a lot of readings lately. But oddly, it's been coming up with good cards, like the Three of Cups, which represents the pleasure and enjoyment that we have in each other's company. It represents a family, for example, or friends. It's three people having a good time together. Is usually pictures of it for the card show that sort of thing. So it's a very abundant, pleasurable experience, the Three of Cups. It is not the experience that one associates with this card. There are many different ways to read that particular grouping, but that just gives you some idea of the kinds of things coming up. So Uranus is the disruptor, the destroyer, the breakdown, smash what's not working. Taurus, on the other hand, is the opposite of this. Taurus is the sign that is the slow, steady builder. Build the foundation, build it up from there, build it to last. It's the preserver, really, in a way. The earth sign that is stable, steady, secure. So this is not really a sign that one would think Uranus belongs in. A financial astrologer whose work I like on many levels, Raymond Merriman, has said that financially this will have to do with changes happening in, what does he say, banking, and I seem to remember beef, right? Well, I'm not really a big investor, so I don't know about that, but I can tell you that what it seems to be saying for most of the rest of us who aren't big investors is that the contracts are changing. That always happens when Uranus moves, because Uranus destroys things, so it will destroy contracts. And it's time to look. It's time to see. And on deep levels, or sometimes on superficial levels, what cages are you accepting in your life that don't need to be accepted? Whether it's on an internal level or an external level, it's time to consider what is sustainable and what is not, and how to restructure what needs to be restructured. But there's been very odd messages in terms of that. For example, a number of readings have had things like the Sun card, which represents abundance as abundance, the height of abundance and prosperity that can be experienced on Earth. Coming up with, say, for example, this grouping. This is the Eight of Wands, something sort of upsetting, or this doesn't have to be bad. This is just something different happening. But the Eight of Cups is like walking away from something, usually out of disappointment or discouragement. The Three of Swords, which is a painful awareness, not necessarily bad, but definitely one that brings a stab to the heart. And the Seven of Cups, which is like at best delayed gratification, and at worst like a disappointing harvest kind of thing. So this experience does not really seem like this, and yet they'll come up together in a way that indicates that it is. That like the best earthly prosperity involves these particular disappointing circumstances. So many people seem to be going through kinds of weird shifts and changes, and sometimes the suggestion of a shift and change that doesn't happen, and sometimes like huge, big things are moving and happening. But I think that that this full moon asks all of us to consider, what does it mean? What are the decisions we've made? What is our idea of the best earthly prosperity, abundance and prosperity? And given that, here's the Yoga Sutras, as the Yoga Sutras say, and not just the Yoga Sutras, Buddhism says it as well, that life is inherently involves suffering. Where's the particular? Here it is. Here's my image for that sutra in the book. Life, it's always going to be a bumpy ride. Suffering is one way to translate it, but the words are really sukha and dukkha. So one of them has to do with a comfortable ride, sukha. They both come from the word ka for axle wheel, and sukha is a good axle wheel. So although that's usually translated as happiness, joy, pleasure, it really means like comfort. It's the way we want things. And dukkha is a bad axle wheel, so again, it's an uncomfortable ride. It might be bumpy, it might be annoying, it might be downright painful, but basically it's uncomfortable. None of us want a bumpy, uncomfortable ride, and yet there is no escaping a bumpy, uncomfortable ride. What the Yoga Sutras are saying is that makes everything, that inherently life is painful because it's always going to be painful. But the fact of the matter is that it's really equally painful and pleasurable. You just have to know that there's really always going to be some of both. So why not? What does it mean to experience all this like sort of these annoying and unpleasant experiences and still recognize that it's the only game in town. It's the best that life has to offer. But also that there is no such thing as like happiness on earth without something, even if it's bad. And that even as we face the destruction of things that we may not always recognize need to be destroyed, there's still tremendous happiness. Sometimes it's just the experience of happiness. Sometimes it's like just there's a friend that one can turn to or go out with. But in our lives, what does it mean to have both at the same time? Because that's really where it is. So as we go through Uranus and Taurus for 7 years, looking at how we both destroy and maintain at the same time will be something that all of us will have to do. And in this particular full moon, in some sense, it's actually perhaps easier than at others.